All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode on Laid Back, the Atrezinga podcast. Our topic for this week is navigating the workspace as a woman, having uncomfortable conversations. So, our guest for this week is a lawyer who recently celebrated her PhD graduation. Welcome, Dr. Amala, to the show.
Thanks, Arinze. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, let's start off with saying congratulations once again. Easy.
Thank you so much, and hello everyone listening.
Yeah, everybody's PhD journey is different. I know what it was like for me. What was the journey like for you to start with?
Where do I even begin? I mean, I think that when you're finishing, it seems like ages since you first started. But yeah, I remember when I started in 2018, and other than my research proposal, which I submitted for the PhD application, I wasn't quite sure. I mean, you're supposed to do the program in 4 years or even 3 years. Some people finish earlier in 3 years, but I wasn't sure how I was going to complete it. Like, I did not have a structure in mind.
Yeah.
And of course, with the PhD journey, you find that when you start doing your research, things change. You also learn new things. So what you had in mind in the beginning may not end up being how you complete the PhD. So you may decide, you're going to go in one direction, and further down the line, things change and you head in a different direction, which is similar to what happened to me, because towards the end, I had to change my topic. Not too drastically. I was looking at Nigeria specifically, but I had to change it to developing economies because I found that my research covered some other countries as well. So I had to adapt it. Anyway, in a nutshell, it was challenging, but I'm actually thankful that I had the right supervisory team who were like patient and were guiding me and directing me. So it's just good to have good supervisory team, a good support system in terms of family and friends as well, to see you through. But I'm just glad it's finally over.
Yeah, fair. That thing you mentioned about research, to be honest, unless the person, most of the time, the research does not go according to plan. That's the research for you.
Yeah.
One word or the other, something must happen, and you end up tweaking the topic here and there.
Yeah.
You realize that your initial topic, you don't have enough data, so you have to tweak something to see if you can get more data.
Absolutely.
So considering that's one of the challenges you faced during the PhD, are there other challenges that actually you were faced with when you were doing it?
Of course, there were other challenges. So,
especially when you first started, because that's the hardest part.
I think that when I first started when I finished my master's, in London, I moved back to Nigeria and started practicing for a number of years. So there was that transition I struggled with from being independent and being working to going into a university setting
Again. Yeah.
So, making that transition and getting comfortable in that university environment.
Yeah.
And then also in terms of the actual work, like understanding where to get your resources, sort of resources that I needed at the time. And then sometimes they were not available. So, and there were like annual reviews as well, which are like assessments done annually to gauge that if you're making progress. So there was that panic leading up to the review.
Yeah.
Have you done enough? Are you ready? And then of course there are all the other factors as well in terms of the PhD is postgraduate research. So you also have to think about your career.
What do you want to do with it? What do you want to do?
Exactly. And then surviving whilst you're doing it too, because I mean, it's
The
expensive.
finance, yeah.
You have to think about your finances and being able to manage, because I was working part-time, so being able to manage that and then manage my time as well.
That's
I'm remembering that, I'm doing my research and, there are timelines to the research as well. So it's just being able to manage different factors at the same time.
Yeah, interesting. That you actually, it's not easy to combine work and study. That's really, really, really hard.
Mhm.
Especially when it comes to the PhD. That's a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, and also the PhD is full of frustrations, man. There was this experiment I did when I was doing the PhD. If I remember, it took me 6 months for it to work. It was
Yeah.
that I didn't go mad. Only God knows how I was mad. I was so frustrated. So, if you have such such thing that actually frustrated you, what kept you going through those tough times?
Well, like I said before, so I would say family and friends were like
They kept you safe.
a huge part. And then also just being focused and realizing that understanding that most people were going through the same thing, other PhD students as well.
Yeah.
Being part of that community, having those conversations with your colleagues, sharing experiences, asking them questions. Oh, if you had this particular challenge like I did, how were you able to manage it? And especially senior PhD students that were ahead of you.
Yeah, they help.
So it's always good to have those conversations. And then understanding, at some point, I think I grew a thick skin because you're always going to get feedback on, sometimes you write a piece of work and you think, oh, I've done a fantastic job, and you submit it, and then the comments come back and you're like, wait, what? You think, okay, you take a hit actually, especially your confidence. So there were lots and lots of programs that the university were organizing. So for research students, because they understand that these are common issues that students face, like imposter syndrome, not being sure of yourself, lacking some confidence, and even the motivation to keep going. Because I recall that there were so many times that you have to submit a piece of work, but you just don't have the motivation, you don't have any ideas to write down, nothing. And I wouldn't say that the trick is just to force yourself, because for me, at those points when I hit a roadblock, I'll just stop, do something completely different that would distract me and take my mind off the work. And I found that when I took such time off, it always helps, because you come back with a fresh and new mindset.
Yeah.
And without knowing, ideas just come back to you again. So it's always just good to pause, take time out. There's nothing wrong with that.
I agree. After first year of my PhD, I had to leave. Even though within that first year, I went to different countries, but in particular, this one I had to leave and go back and just see my family. And I think after then, I felt better. You feel much better, just going away and then seeing people you like, people you love, and then coming back to it, you feel much better.
I agree.
Yeah. So, but you also mentioned that you have a good relationship. From what you said, maybe I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. That you have a good relationship you had a good relationship with your supervisor.
Yes.
And I really think that relationship between the PhD supervisor and the student is very important. If that person is going to be successful in that journey.
Yes.
Even to maintain your sanity to it. It's important.
Very true.
When things didn't go according to plan, maybe due to inconsistency or lack of zeal to you, how did you guys navigate that conversation between the supervisor and the student?
So I would say that my relationship, so I had different supervisors. So I started off with two. One had to leave along the way because he became Queen's Counsel at the time, which is now King's Counsel, which is similar to what we have in Nigeria as Senior Advocates of Nigeria, SANs. So he had to be replaced. But that was, I think, when I was towards completion. But one of my supervisors was very involved. And he was also friendly. So it was the approach. So most times when we had our meetings, we'll start off just discussing random things, that will put you at ease, and then slowly then start talking about the work. Yeah. That said, he was also very professional in the sense that when it came to the work, he would constructively give you feedback or criticize work that you've not done well.
Yeah.
But being human, that gets to you, right? Yeah. I think that over time, I developed an ability to be able to try to just take a step back, understand what they are saying,
That is not a personal hit. It's not a personal attack.
Absolutely. Yes. So it's not a personal attack. They're just trying to improve your work. But again, that's why I said initially being human. So that human factor always plays a role at some point. So you're definitely going to feel down because you're human.
Yeah.
But yes, so after a while, I'll really think about what they've done, try to see from their own perspective and understand what they're saying. And even when I'm unable to understand, there's no harm in asking more questions. Okay, so what did you mean by this? And then the critical part that they play as well is being able to direct you or point you in the right direction as well. So even though they said this is what you've done that isn't right or not very correct, but also being able to say this is how we think you should go about it and address it. And then along the way, as you're trying to address it, they're also supporting you through that process as well, which is a critical part of their role.
Yeah.
That said, not all supervisors are that way, because I know that some of my colleagues did not have a really good relationship with their supervisors. Like I saw them panicking when they had meetings with them. So I can't really speak from that point, but I just know that if you have a good relationship with your supervisors, it really, really helps, because the work is already very challenging as it is, and you don't need that additional pressure.
Honestly, do you remember I had a lovely time with my supervisor? I love her. I would like, I really, really do. But I met people and they were so scared to talk to their supervisor. So I give them advice, like, for example, to navigate that uncomfortable, why don't you just maybe before the meeting starts, buy your supervisor a cup of coffee, so you guys can have like a normal chat before you go into the nitty-gritty of the PA. Like you see, like make the atmosphere fun. Then you guys can actually have a normal conversation about. But for some reason, so a lot of people found it so hard to do. I really do not understand why. So it's good to hear how you actually navigated yours. But now that you're done, because you said you did a PhD and you were working you've been doing part-time work while doing the PhD. Now that you're done with the PhD and you've transitioned from now extent to full worker now as a commercial lawyer, what do you think is the difference between both worlds? Is there any way you navigate uncomfortable conversations in academia and at your workplace right now? Any difference?
I wouldn't really say there's much difference. I mean, so in the workplace, also navigating uncomfortable conversations, I would take it as receiving feedback on the work that you've done. But feedback as well can be very subjective.
Yeah.
And subjective from the person giving the feedback and also the person receiving the feedback, because people receive feedback differently.
Yeah.
And people give feedback differently. So two people can say the same thing in two different ways and they'll be taken in different ways as well.
Yeah.
And I had this conversation with a friend as well.
Sorry to cut you short. Do you think the feedback, because you said two people can give the same feedback and they take it differently. Yes. Do you think it's because of any bias, or maybe the person doesn't like the person saying it? Why do you think that's the case?
I think it's approach and manner of delivery.
Okay.
And then also sensitivity as well in terms of the person receiving. So the person giving, I think, is their approach and the way they deliver that feedback. So not everyone who is in a senior role is going to make a good manager. There are people who are good managers, and there are managers that are just not the best people for that role. But that said, I think there are trainings for managers.
Yeah.
So, and these are the things that they touch on. So the way you give feedback, even when you're giving like bad feedback, or you're telling somebody, oh, you've done this, but the work is not really up to standard, there are manners and approaches
to say
exactly. So what I find is that some people first introduce or talk about the things that you did well about that piece of work.
Yeah.
Before talking about the negative aspects.
Yeah.
So that's also a way to do it as well.
Yeah.
So again, it depends on the approach. But for me, I think that my PhD training has made me really develop a thick skin in feedback, because I mean, when you've written something and the comments are like, make you feel like what you wrote was rubbish, like you really have to learn how to, you know,
take it personal.
Not take it personal, and understand that that's part of the process.
Yeah.
And that helps me in my role now, because I always get feedback on the work. Of course, positive feedback is excellent. We all love positive feedback, but it's not always going to be positive. Yeah. There'll be times that you may not have performed as good as or as well as previously, exactly, or as expected. So there are those inconsistencies will happen from time to time.
Yeah, you mentioned I know one of the most important traits as a manager. Emotional intelligence is really, really important. You mentioned that feedback thing. There's something we call sandwich method. I give people feedback, and I've told a lot of people this. That sometimes they don't understand it. I told them, I know everybody likes being blunt. I can be blunt. I said that if I'm being blunt to you, no matter how much you think, I don't think I can take it. Honestly, because you think you have bad mouth now that you can talk to me. If I talk to you, but I'm sure you hate me for my because you cannot take it. So that's why there's something called, first of all, give a positive comment. You can tell the person this is now the problem afterwards, and then give another positive comment to sandwich, like at least it makes the person feel better, because there must be something good that person is doing. The person or her, it's not possible. It's either the person actually comes in early. At least mention the person is always punctual. There must be something good the person is doing. And if it's all negative, the person will lose morale to work for you to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But why do you think a lot of people find this so hard? Yeah, and it makes them so uncomfortable to actually talk about uncomfortable conversations in the workspace. You see a lot of people, they maybe things happen, instead of talking about it, they just go around gossiping about it, but they would never address the issue. They ask, why do you think that's the case?
Well, it depends. Different workplaces have different work cultures.
Yeah.
So I would say it just depends on the work culture in a certain organization. In where I work, for example, people are encouraged to speak out when things happen. Two things: one, to address the issue, and secondly, to improve. And this point also goes to giving feedback as well. So I believe in not only are you giving somebody feedback, but tell them how to improve. So in terms
and complain,
absolutely. In terms of when people talk about things that go wrong in the workplace and actually just gossip about it instead of going through formal channels, it doesn't help anybody. It just makes the workplace uncomfortable for people, makes it unconducive. But then again, I think it's a responsibility of the leadership to create that culture in the workplace and promote the values. So when you tell people in our team meetings, for example, at my workplace, we're constantly being told, speak out when something happens, and then there are formal processes put in place as well. For example, we do surveys from time to time where they ask us, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about that? How do you think this works well? Do you think it would work better if we did it this way? And then we fill out those surveys. But not only do we fill out those surveys, we see the results of the surveys, and then subsequently we have meetings on how to actually improve those processes where people are involved, people's opinions are sought.
Yeah.
So you can see action taking place. It's not just, they're just telling you to speak out just for you to speak out. Nobody does anything about it.
Yeah.
So I think that there are different parts of it. So speak out, first of all, create a conducive environment, and that's the responsibility of the managers and the senior officers in that organization. And when you do, people then feel comfortable to actually speak out.
Say their mind, yeah.
Exactly. And then you see implementation, things being done to address those issues.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
no, you're right in that aspect. I've been in academia for a while, and there's something I say to my students. I try as much as possible to create a positive atmosphere in the class. And I make it a point that I do not want anybody to laugh at anybody.
Right.
Whether it's because maybe this person, you have a lot of international students, maybe the person is not speaking English the right way, or the person don't know but don't laugh at anybody. And I noticed, I'm trying to make a point because of what he said. I noticed I've had a lot of people, a lot of students walk up to me to tell me, oh, they are struggling with this. They want to drop out. You realize, and I realized they talk to me, but their other lecturer, they will not talk to them. And I realized, okay, maybe it's because I actually create this atmosphere for them to feel like, okay, it's cool to talk to this person.
I agree.
Yeah. So that thing you mentioned is very important for every workspace to make sure that the atmosphere is positive.
Right.
Not when Amala opens up to this the manager lashes out at Amala will never open up again.
Absolutely, and that's true. And then you find that those people, it becomes a toxic environment. You get fed up. You start looking for new opportunities elsewhere.
Yeah, Amala will never open up. Yeah, no, because I think we all want to be happy, and if you are not happy at work, definitely it's going to affect your life, because when you go back home, you're always complaining to your friends, your partners. Whether you like it or not, one word, it may come off and affect your own life at home.
And then it will affect your productivity at work as well.
Definitely. Because you don't feel like you're valued at where you are. You find the right circle and the right workspace where you can actually produce your best work. I agree with that. But because of time, let's run off with this final question. Yeah, I want you to think about this. If you have a daughter today, what would be your advice to her in terms of standing up for herself and having uncomfortable conversations?
So I've always been an advocate for, I'm a lawyer by profession, so you have to be able to speak up for yourself when something that isn't right is done to you or done to somebody else. So for my daughter, I think that I will raise my daughter, because these things start from school, nursery, primary, secondary school. So teach them to be able to speak up for themselves. And especially where, wherever it is they find themselves, we are still, although there is feminism going on, but you still find that imbalance as well between men and women. So the way I was raised in my family, like, we were treated equally. When it came to education, that education that you're going to give to a male child was also given to a female child, and the female child were taught to dream and
aspire to get it.
Exactly. So the point is, the fact that you're female doesn't count. Just see yourself as an individual and as a human being. Be able to speak out for yourself. Feel comfortable enough to speak out for yourself and for others as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way I will bring up my daughter.
Interesting. You mentioned that you try as much as possible to make her confident. What would you do to ensure that she's confident? Anything?
In the way that I speak to her,
okay,
I would let her know, just speak words of wisdom and strength to her. When you see her behave in a certain way that you think is not going to make her very confident, then tell her, okay, this is not how to behave. Try and behave this way. So I think first thing is how you speak to them, and then how you live your life, because they watch you.
Yeah.
So be an example.
Yeah.
Really. Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Well, anyway, on that note, this is where we're going to round off for today. Thank you, Amala, for coming on to the show.
Thank you so much.
I hope you had fun, though.
I did have fun, and it was actually very enjoyable. I enjoyed myself.
Definitely. So we should do more then.
We should do more, yes.
Yeah, definitely. We'll plan that. All right. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.